Black Monday is brought to you by Bidenomics, Japan, and the Kamala factor. Um, I think on the top of that list is definitely Camilla and Bidenomics. Um, y'all know how I feel about this, about the economy. Um, is this by design? Are they intentionally trying to destroy the economy? I don't know, but that's exactly what's happening by their policies, by the all the regulations, the government spending, the wanting to get rid of the tax cuts that helping the average American. All of these things play a factor. The open border, all of these things play a factor. Play a factor on our economy. So we're gonna talk about it. But before we get started, go ahead and hit that like button, share this out so we can get this information out there. Subscribe if you're not already a subscriber, and hit that alarm bell so you know when I'm putting out new stuff. Also, check out my link tree in the description. It has a link to my Patreon. That's where I talk about things that I can't talk about here. Also, check me out on X. That's where I put out news throughout the day as well, and my thoughts. All right, so let's talk about this news. Now, this comes from the Dossier by Jordan Satchel, and he reports that the global economy is having the worst case of the Mondays that some of us have ever witnessed. Countless portfolios are rapidly becoming unburdened by what has been, and I saw that last night. It was getting late. I was getting ready for bed, and I saw all these things coming across my feed about how bad the economy is, and I was like, oh my gosh, there's a crash coming. I got to report on this. And then I found Peter Schiff, the economist, was doing a Twitter space or X space. So I hopped on there and I was like, oh man, that's some good stuff on here. I got to go live and show this to my followers. So I went live last night, up into the early morning, on the stock market. So what exactly is going on and how did this happen? We've honed in on several major economic and political factors for what the world is witnessing. Ever wish you could turn back time and invest in Amazon early days? Well, buckle up because the AI revolution is offering a second chance. In the Motley Fool's latest report, dive into the world. Oh my God, this is just advertisement. I apologize for that part. Let me move on here. The $20 trillion yen carry trade reversal. This one carries perhaps the most significant weight. For quite some time, institutional investors have been leveraging Japanese markets to borrow Japanese yen at an interest-free rate and reinvesting the loan to buy higher yield assets in other markets. For Japan, this isn't an ideal status quo. To put it mildly, the yen carry trade, a $20 trillion trade vehicle, to understand the significance, is about half the value of the S&P 500, has harmed the Japanese economy, and it has made investing in Japan an unattractive proposal. As a free-floating currency, the yen has been used to benefit foreigners at the expense of the Japanese people. The country also faces a shrinking economy caused by their fiscal woes and their ongoing depopulation crisis, which is crazy. I actually written about that when I was an undergrad, about what's going on with the population crisis out there in Japan. So Kazuo Ude, the governor of the Bank of Japan, decided it was time to hike rates and impose several additional aggressive steps to bolster the yen. Instead of letting the yen carry trade upwind and thereby blowing up at least 20 trillion in global wealth, Western interests will probably start to put massive pressure on Japan. They may start by leveraging the U.S. protectorate status and other means to convince the Japanese to lower interest rates back to near zero. Then we got the Federal Reserve, despicable Federal Reserve. We need to end the Fed. But the Fed has received a lot of criticism for its interest rate policies, rightfully so, with many arguing that the institution, which should be abolished, and I just alluded to that as well, is historically out of touch with the state of the U.S. economy. Some Wall Street analysts say the Fed didn't act quickly enough to hike rates and likewise didn't act quickly enough to lower rates. I don't know about that. I don't know about lowering the rates, but the hiking rates I agree with. Once they noticed inflation was out of control, they should have hiked the rates immediately, and they didn't. They did not. And I don't think now is the time to lower rates either. In fact, I think they need to. Honestly, I think they need to hike it a little bit more to try to do something about this runaway inflation. But those of us who believe in free markets would contend that it's utterly ridiculous that a group of economic so-called quote oracles has a mandate to dictate American economic conditions and interest rates, because a free market can do a much better job determining these endpoints. And I agree. We don't really have a free market. And then we got the Kamala factor. They call it the Kamala crash. You can get away with economic incompetence when sentiment is bullish, because Americans are fortunate to live in a country that possesses the strong, resilient, and reliable engine that is the U.S. economy. But when sentiment is bearish, like it is now, markets suddenly stomach the possibility that a brain-dead, anti-human progressive called Kamala Harris may assume the presidency. The vice president has had significant tailwinds following her ascension to the Democratic throne, and her campaign has wisely hidden her from scrutiny, so that the corporate media could rebrand and remake the longtime politician into something new. Here's a reminder of what we could potentially be dealing with if Trump doesn't pull off a victory in November. I'm sure y'all all seen this clip here, but I'm gonna play it again. Here we go.
What else are you going to do to fix this problem with inflation?
All right, thank you. Well, let's start with this. Prices have gone up.
Duh.
And families and individuals are dealing with the realities of that bread costs.
Hold on. She obviously has some notes there. She looked down at her notes. Now, she's saying this with notes. She's not off the cuff. She's this terrible with notes.
More, the gas costs more. And we have to understand what that means.
What does it mean?
That's about the cost of living going up. That's about having to stress and stretch limited resources.
Oh, really?
That's about a source of stress for families that is not only economic, but is on a daily level, something that is a heavy weight to carry. So it is something that we take very seriously, very seriously. And we know from the history of this issue in the United States that when you see these prices go up, it has a direct impact on the quality of life for all people in our country. So it's a big issue, and we take it seriously. And it is a priority, therefore.
But that's not what we asked. We asked, what are you going to do about it? See how she never answered the question? She just gave a word salad. Never answered the question because she doesn't have an answer to the question. I told you she's incompetent. But interesting enough, if Trump starts to get more momentum on the campaign trail, it will almost certainly help markets rebound at a faster pace. Too much spending, Bidenomics, and Congress. The United States government has authorized the spending of tens of trillions of dollars in recent years, running up the national debt to well over $35 trillion. The federal government spent over $6 trillion alone in fiscal year 2023. That is unprecedented. With COVID hysteria came an entirely new economic environment of, quote, emergency spending, and governments have insisted upon making those spending levels a permanent fixture. Once they start, it's good. You cannot reel it back in. The monster's out of the bag. You let government spend out of control, they're not going to ever bring a balanced budget, I believe, ever. Because you let that monster out the bag and they're going to continue to spend. But so-called Bidenomics has been an unmitigated disaster, with boondoggles like the American Rescue Plan and the Inflation Reduction Act adding trillions of dollars of waste to the country's balance sheet. And I warned y'all before this Inflation Reduction Act passed that this was going to do the exact opposite. It's not going to reduce inflation. In fact, it's going to add to inflation. And that's what exactly happened. We told you these things before this happened. But Congress has been complicit in normalizing the soaring budgets, rubber stamping massive spending, massive deficits, and the permanent exponential growth of government every step of the way. This has imposed massive harm upon the U.S. economy and global markets. Then we got global turmoil, the Russia-Ukraine war, which we continue to spend billions upon billions on, continues with no end in sight. In the Middle East, something else we're spending billions of dollars on, an increasingly flammable tinderbox. The global economy is also dealing with the transition from a unipolar world dominated by American interests to a multipolar world with many rising power players. This has greatly impacted global trade as sea lanes are constantly threatened by powers that seek to secure land grabs and impose protectionist economic and military measures to bolster their respective sovereigns. Now we know that there's a new trade route that was actually created with Russia and a few other countries now. So they don't have to use the normal trade routes they've been using. Now it's possible that everything could turn around tomorrow. It's also possible that we are at the beginning stages of a global economic meltdown. Stay tuned. And I believe we are in a meltdown right now. I believe that's what's happening. The chickens are finally coming home to roost. The mainstream media can no longer kick the can down the road and lie to us and piss on our head and tell us it's raining, because we can actually see it. We actually know what's going on. But y'all let me know what y'all think about this. Leave your comments down below. Like, share, subscribe, and check out jjthepsychotherapist.com for the latest in news. Until next time, peace.